Welcome back, everyone, for the final segment of the day. We have a couple of keynote speeches now, followed by the Smartpreneur Awards by Dubai Chamber of Commerce. So our next talk would be about accelerating innovation, helping startups to have a brighter future, and helping brands to be more innovative, by Mr. James Temple, Regional SVP and Executive Creative Director of RGA.
Thank you. Here I am to talk about accelerating innovation. And there's two sides of this presentation. One is around helping startups have a more viable future. And the other half is how helping established brands to actually be more innovative and look beyond their own sort of internal programs to drive innovation in their organizations. Just to give you a little sense, I'm not sure of who's aware of RGA in the room here. So just to give you a little sense, we're the world's most awarded digital agency. And our calling card, if you like, has been that we've capitalized on the disruption of technology. So as opposed to observing it and trying to catch up with it, we more sort of like focus on forecasting it and trying to get immersed in it to stay ahead of our competition and be of the utmost use to our clients. And that goes from in the 70s, pioneering digital effects and film, through to the present day, we're creating new products and services like Nike Plus for our client list. We are very fortunate in this realm to work with some of the greatest clients in the world, and Nike is one of them. An example of how we've helped Nike innovate to differentiate it competitively and dominate their industry was a piece of work we did in 2006, where we worked for a year and a half with Nike and Apple to launch Nike Plus. At the time, Nike was sort of declining in their market share of the running category, which is $1 billion business. So we understood there was a pedometer, the ability to put a chip in a shoe, to talk to iPod Nano, and actually help people just do it. Motivate people to run further, run faster, on their own and with others. And at the time, Nike Plus was the first consumer IoT wearable on the market. It's gone on to have 30 million runners, and Nike, in the 7 months after the launch of Nike Plus, went from a 46% market share to a 56% market share. And in a $1 billion sector, that's a good return. So after that, we evolved into creating the Fuel Band with Nike, which is a wearable, again, to sort of motivate the masses to take the stairs versus the elevator, and just encourage you to be more active in your lifestyle. And just like Nike, we've been a long-standing partner of Beats by Dre, the guys with the headphones. And through advertising, we've helped really establish their brand from a startup 7 or 8 years ago to 70% market share in the premium headphones industry. And we also created for them Beats Music, which was a competitor to Spotify, which went on soon after launch to be acquired by Apple for $3 billion. So I guess we've gone through these journeys with our clients in almost a startup capacity, creating these new products and services. And so we took a look at it as an experience and how we could apply that to startups. And one of the things we're noticing right now, and I don't think this whole conference is about that, is that technology is disrupting the hell out of everything. And it's not just about, it used to be in the past, there was significant disruptions that would happen on sort of with a longer duration between them. Now it's every day. There's a new API, there's a new service, there's a new startup launched, and it has complete influence and concern over your business. So in the realms of trying to help establish companies with the disruption of technology, we're looking at a shift in the market whereby there's lots of professors like this gentleman here stating that in 2020, more than 3/4 of the S&P 500 will be made up of companies you don't know. So in that respect, as a big brand, that's sort of troubling. That's clearly I need to innovate to stay ahead and to find new revenue models, new business opportunities via products and services. And also as a startup, in order to compete in this space, I need to be much more viable from the way I make money to how I service my customers. And right now, there's a lot of services that they require that aren't readily at their fingertips. So one of the things we looked at in that perspective is if the new economy is coming from startups, and you see it's a very strange thing where the likes of Spotify haven't earned a dime, and yet they're such a dominant business, how can we help the smaller startups so we can kind of shift the dynamic where from a 90% failure rate, could we actually sort of help maybe 2 in 10 startups succeed? And what can we do as a company from our experience with the likes of Beats, the likes of Nike, to help these startups have a more viable future? In 2013, we did a program, an Accelerator program, and I'm sure everyone in the room here and this conference is familiar with accelerators, but we did one with Nike around fuel, the API that came out of the fuel ban in 2013. And what we identified is that most of these accelerator programs are very focused on money. They're focused on the financial capital, and they're focused on mentoring, both fundamental to the success of any kind of accelerator. But what we identified was missing was creativity. The ability to look at these startups and identify whether they're even in the right sector, let alone if their interface is good, their branding is good, if their communication is good. All of that was absent in all of these programs. And as you walk the halls of CES and you look at all these sort of like 50 wearables all in the sports space, you can't identify what's different between one to the next. So as we got involved in this in 2013, we identified that perhaps if we could apply the creative services that we do for our sort of brands and pull that into the context of an accelerator, that might give the startups in our programs an unfair advantage over all the others. So in 2013, we launched the Ventures program and the RGA Accelerator. And it was specifically geared around these 4 propositions. An active mentor network, the best innovators in the world, people who have had successful exits of their own startups, and some of the best technology minds out there. Financial capital, where we're giving you 120,000 seed funding. And then the two things that we thought were a fundamental difference, and if there's some startups in the room here, maybe you'd agree, is the client capital of being able to introduce you to the heads of innovation at places like Google and Nike and Unilever, where you can interact with an audience that potentially isn't as accessible as you'd like it to be. And then that creative capital, whereby if you don't have the ability to identify that, but to refine your interface, to put your proposition into a sentence, to make your brand really representative of your product. That's something that's a huge competitive advantage. And so that was what we put together as this program here for the RGA Accelerator. So we've coupled all of the existing services that you'd get from most programs, and we surrounded them with all these things: business transformation, experience design, motion graphics, data science, data visualization, user interface, app builds, industrial design, pretty much everything to round you out, to think about yourselves as a brand versus just a product. An example I'll take you through of how we think is a good example of how impactful this has been is a product that we worked on called Hammerhead. And this was in our first IoT and connected devices programs. And I'll play you a quick video to help highlight how Hammerhead came into the program, where they exited after 3 months as a very viable IoT product.
Biking's popularity is surging, but it's still hard for riders to find safe, direct routes. Using a smartphone to navigate while you're riding is dangerous. Hammerhead solves this problem by giving bike riders a new kind of navigation system, inspired by the ones that pilots use to land airplanes. While you're riding, lights help guide you in the simplest way possible. Left turns, right turns, gradual turns. When you make a mistake, Hammerhead can easily tell you to turn around. It connects to your smartphone using Bluetooth. Tell the app where you want to go, then put the phone away and ride. We helped make Hammerhead a reality, from building and positioning the brand, to designing the user experience and prototyping the app, to improving the design of the product itself. Hammerhead's routes now take into account factors like hills, traffic, and weather, and it will all add up to the world's most comprehensive database of bike routes. Something every rider will be able to benefit from using our free app, whether they purchase a Hammerhead navigation system or not. Hammerhead is off and running, selling an innovative, connected product and keeping the roads safer for everyone. This is Hammerhead.
So hopefully you can see there from that example that very simply what we're trying to do is help startups build a brand, not just a product. And by looking at everything they're doing in a 360 perspective, I think that positions their company to be much more viable and potentially desirable to a customer base in the future. I'll take you through a very specific example where I break this down into the discrete services we did with a company that called Alvo. Alvo, this is a video that'll take you through the proposition first.
It's the best part of being a kid. But if your child has asthma, it's really asthma that has them. Medication can help, but most parents are concerned about over-medicating their kids and looking for better solutions. It turns out that when asthma patients track their conditions and exercise their lungs, it cuts their need for medication by up to 86%. But the devices patients are given today are boring, not fun to use, don't track data, or offer lung training. They're just about the last thing a kid would be interested in. That's where Alvo comes in. Alvo is a breathing trainer that acts like a game controller. But instead of using your thumbs, you control the game with your breath. Alvo tracks your progress while you play, and because it's fun, kids will keep playing while they get healthier. We helped to design Alvo's games around the ways people need to improve their lung health. Inhaling and exhaling moves the character up and down to hit targets. Other games measure how hard you can exhale, a very important indicator of the seriousness of your condition. Parents can see how their kids are doing and get notified if their condition takes a turn for the worse or is improving. We helped Alvo create their groundbreaking product and experience, from branding and naming to positioning and targeting, to refining and prototyping the controller, to the user experience of the app and the games themselves. Now, Alvo is partnering with some of the top hospitals in the US to make their games even more useful. So we can help even more kids with asthma go out and play, and help their parents breathe easier.
So to just break this down, when Alvo came to us at the beginning of this program and the first meeting, their company was positioned as breath training for endurance athletes. That's where this started on day one of the 3-month program. And what we sort of looked at from a business strategy perspective, from looking at the market sizing, is that's very niche, very, very niche. And so we identified that, as you probably heard in the video, that if kids from an early age get into breath training, if they're asthmatics, they are 86% more likely to not need medication as they grow older. And so in the US alone, where there's 26 million asthmatics, that all of a sudden becomes a $1 billion market opportunity. So that sort of straight away is a pretty significant pivot here from going from endurance training into sort of like breath training for kids with asthma. That's the first thing we did. And then going beyond that, it's like, okay, so what does this apparatus look like? If I'm a kid, I'm going to be training breath with these things. This is what it looks like. I would challenge anyone's child to readily embrace this equipment to help sort of become part of their daily routine and train their lungs. So we looked at very simple things like old games from back in the day where kids just blow into it. A little ball rises up and down through a hoop. Super simple, fun, pretty effortless to sort of build into your routine. And off of that, we started to design a brand system. This was the first sort of like naming exploration that we came up with, which was Flow. We felt it was a little bit serious potentially. So then we moved into Alvo, and this is the different representations of the identity that we created. And you'll see why the O is sort of like elevated at the end. So we're creating a brand around this. And then the first device they had looked like this. You can see for a kid's hand, they're holding it with two hands, which is ergonomically not ideal, right? It's tethered into a tablet device. Also, not exactly the most free experience for a child. So we quickly got into the idea that this thing that these kids are holding is effectively a game controller, right? Your game controller is controlled by your breath, so it needs to be something you can hold with one hand, so you have freedom of movement. And these are the iterations we went through, and we focused on this very simple form factor. And then, if it's a game, we went through the design exercise of making sure that how do we synchronize your breath training as far as like inhale, exhale, hold breath, and everything else to control the inputs of a game through the handheld breath device. And these are the things that working with researchers we came up with, the different states of lung training. And then we basically composed that into a format where you'd have a key character that would be representative of this. Obviously, the blowfish. It expands, it contracts with your breath. So then you look at it, you map it back to different states of inputs, and then we created a 3-tiered game for them. We helped them come up with the first 2 and empowered them to do the third. So you can see this has gone from like day 1, 3 months later, into a pretty radical transformation. I think this is the kind of thing we're talking about when it comes to this sort of creative capital that you can combine with financial capital and mentoring in these programs to give startups a very sort of unfair advantage. So that's what an experience is with Alvo. We've gone through this now in a number of programs and 41 startups. And what we're seeing as a trend coming through the back of it is that these companies are attracting significant investment from the likes of these kind of investors, Intel Capital being one of the most active in our programs. And this is just in a 24-hour period of investment of graduates coming through our program. You can see around a raise of 10 million for Listener, which deals with smart audio tones, through to 2.5 for Chargify, which is wireless charging plates. And so this idea of creative capital and putting this within an accelerator program, we're seeing that on average, the people graduating out of our accelerator are trending at 2.5 times the raises of companies coming out of any other program. So we're seeing it as being very, very effective. And people like Forbes are sort of like identifying with that as well, as being a standout differentiator in this kind of program. So if that's what we're doing with startups to help try and shift the needle and allow them to have a slightly more viable future by thinking of them as a brand versus just a single product or service, then how can we help accelerate brands by allowing them to have a more outside-in mentality? So I think a lot of brands when it comes to innovation, they're very insular. They're very protective. I mean, don't let anyone know what we're up to. But what we're seeing is because of the rate of disruption with technology, it's very hard to come up with new formats of innovation internally. So what we're advocating is being more of an open mindset, incorporating startups into your innovation agenda to help you sort of trial new business models, adjacent technology opportunities in order to propel your innovation agenda. One such example we've done is with the LA Dodgers in California. We worked with them last year to launch a sports media and entertainment accelerator. And it was really for them about, they want to innovate the fan experience in the stadium. They want to innovate the services within the stadium, from food and beverage to merchandise through to second screen experiences. And they also want to give back. They don't want to just evolve their sports team. They want to then push that into the league and beyond. So one of the things that we looked at with this is making the targeted technologies within the program as expansive as possible. And just to flag a few of these things, I don't think you'd expect things like diagnostic technologies and loyalty programs, advanced stats, enhanced fan engagement. It's a very, very broad set of technologies within the program. And these are the 10 graduates. I'd very much encourage you to go and check them out. Things like Appetize and DoorStat are driving huge revenue into the business, even within year one. And one of the ones I'll take you through actually is Conduct Technologies. This came in as a 10-year-old startup. And the doctor who was running it basically has the most sophisticated 3D renders of the human form I've ever seen. So if you're an athlete and you've torn your ACL, they can sit you down and make you feel very comfortable around, well, probably not comfortable. They can make you feel aware of what your rehabilitation is going to look like and that your career is intact, it's going to be okay. When we met with Conduct, it seemed that it might be better to be predictive. If you could actually analyze data and see injuries coming before they actually happen. And this is what the Conduct system looks like now.
Health and fitness data available. Apps, wearables, and other devices are collecting endless data from athletes all over the world. Disconnected data. But what if there was a way to connect this data? Introducing Conduct Athlete Management System. It works by first bringing all the disparate data sources to one location. The platform then identifies patterns to see what data matters and when. For example, in the hockey world, by connecting live game feeds with daily fitness data, a direct correlation between grip strength and shots on goal was discovered. More shots on goal equals more goals. More goals, more games won. This changed the team's strength training, as well as scouting and recruiting. In professional basketball, we've created a sleep tracking system and have determined that if a player's sleep score falls below a certain threshold, their free throw percentage drops. Not the next day, but 2 days after poor sleep. This has impacted the team's travel schedule, as well as the athlete's sleep schedule. For Major League Baseball, Conduct's machine learning engine worked to identify an athlete's inability to decelerate to the increase in soft tissue injury. Now, when we detect this pattern, an alert is sent to the team's training staff, so they can take action and prevent the injury from happening in the future. Currently, the 50-plus professional and NCAA programs using our system have seen a drastic reduction in preventable injuries and a 3% increase in wins. This is the Conduct Athlete Management System, using data to transform the sports industry.
See, again, from a brand perspective, by including Conduct into their sort of arsenal for how they can protect their players. I mean, if you're a fan of Arsenal, for example, or Liverpool FC, yeah, the likes of Jack Wilshere and Daniel Sturridge being on the bench for a majority of the season, that makes you basically cost about, I don't know, 100 grand a goal. That's not that viable. But if you could actually analyze the training patterns of all these athletes and then trigger notifications of when they're potentially going to have a hamstring injury in the future, that's a massively powerful thing for a brand who wouldn't be able to innovate that internally. So this is an example where we're basically like trying to match up very, very interesting startups with brands to help accelerate the nature of their business. And just to wrap up, the whole idea for us within these programs is about leveraging the creative capital. We're now working within these themes internationally to create programs. We're extending our OTA program. We're in the second round of our sports program with the Dodgers. We've launched a commerce program with Westfield Labs about the future of retail and commerce in San Francisco. And we're moving into some cities programs and cybersecurity, which is a whole different topic, but it's pretty much the front lines. So I thank you very much. I hope that was clear and how we're sort of looking at accelerating innovation for startups and brands with a little bit of sprinkling of creativity. And with that, I say thank you.